because you said this, so then it's that.
No.
He is recording this.
I'm not that, okay? I'm a this. This is Kathleen Landsey.
And this is Anne Patterson. It was started by Andrea Sabadini, who is a psychoanalytic colleague, and I think it was his idea. I don't think there was anything like this anywhere in the world. And I think what he did was exactly what I'm hoping to do, or we are even, which is to bring together psychoanalysis and film. I've been passionate about film since the age of about 16, and I studied film a bit theoretically because of the particular degree I did in Hungary. And I think that psychoanalysis has a lot to say about film, and film is a very particular artistic genre that lends itself to psychoanalytic exploration.
I had been running film events for many years when I was a psychiatrist in the NHS. I was really into teaching and training, and I thought that going to see a movie with my trainees was a great way of opening up a very different sort of conversation about emotional states, relationships, in a way that helped them look at themselves and their emotional responses. And so I started off doing that, and then when I got a chance to do this with Kathleen, I jumped at it. Well, I'd like to say it's for everyone, because we'd like to be as inclusive as possible. So I think anyone who has an interest in either film or psychoanalysis or both is very welcome. And it's not even so much what they would take away, but also what they would bring to it. Because when we say we want a dialogue between filmmakers and psychoanalysts, but we also want a dialogue with the audience to have a conversation.
They're quite informal events, and this is our second time. Last time the festival was on Hope. We were sort of at the very end of the pandemic, and it was a very important theme at that time. Quite a lot of people in the audience still wore masks, and it was just a very poignant event, and we didn't know until perhaps the last minute whether it will actually go ahead in person. So, but the audience is usually lively, and so there is an interesting interaction, and the three auditoria have different films running parallel on the Saturdays. So it encourages smaller groups actually to be together and discuss films. Lots of discussions, and that's probably the most exciting part of the committee work, isn't it?
It is. I think the other thing about the consultants, though, is, and this is quite a hard ask, I think, is that we do ask them that if they're going to recommend a film, that they need to have some way of contacting the filmmaker, because after all, we actually want to have people from the film coming to the festival, because each of our panels to discuss the films is comprised of somebody from the film and a psychoanalyst. So we also ask them if they can make contact with the people.
Yes, indeed. And I think that's been quite a journey, at least for me, to see just how different the way of life of a filmmaker is from a psychoanalyst. A psychoanalyst life is kind of like the life of a monk or an ass. It's very, very regularized, you know. It's a bit like the gong goes and the prayers start. So our lives are in daily chunks which are predictable, and we just mark things on our diary when there is an event like a conference or a festival. Filmmakers don't work like this at all, right? Because they don't know how long a film will take that they're shooting, because they don't know when they'll be in it, because the actors don't know when they'll be called. So to match the two, bring the two together has been quite tricky.
Well, it's been a journey. It's a bit hybrid, isn't it? Because it's also not like an ordinary psychoanalytic conference either, you know, where very often analysts present papers, but quite often they might read them, they might be highly technical, whereas actually, or one person will present their paper, then somebody else, whereas here we really try and get people to speak a bit more spontaneously, you know, obviously to some notes, but again, this notion of dialogue. So I think it is a bit of a hybrid, which can be, I think, both really creative but also quite challenging, for everybody involved.
It's perhaps worth saying that the films are all very good, otherwise you wouldn't have chosen them, but that our focus was not just on the quality of the films, but on whether they would be suitable for psychoanalytic discussions and for our themes. So we may have actually left out some excellent movies.
Well, I think we did.
And we did.
Because they were all excellent.
Yes. This is also why I think we probably didn't want to have any awards. It came up as an idea because we don't quite think about this festival as about what is the best film. For what it's worth. I mean, it's open to discussion, but that's been our thinking so far.
I went to this exhibition in Marseille, and it wasn't called Journey. It was about migration, and there was this massive map on the wall, and it overlaid the journey of Ulysses, the hero's journey, with all his obstacles to overcome, who eventually goes home, with the journey of Aeneas, who of course in a sense was a refugee, crossing the Mediterranean to find a new home in Rome. And then also they added the current contemporary hazardous journeys of refugees now. And somehow I felt very moved by this. And I think there's something of all those different sorts of journeys that come up in the films and that can be thought about, not only from a sort of filmic perspective, but also the idea of the internal journeys that we all make. And I think that's what we would probably quite like to explore. What are the internal journeys? Do we try and find a new home? What are we fleeing away from? What do you have to do psychologically in order to go on a journey, which includes leaving things behind, mourning, loss, all of that.
And I think the journeys, there are a whole lot of different journeys in these films. One of the striking things with the submissions was because we get these films submitted by our European consultants, so they represent their own country. They're psychoanalysts who are interested in film. One of the striking things was what we had a number of, we expected we would have some road movies, which we did, but we had quite a lot of road movies with dead bodies being transported usually in cars, on tops of cars, inside cars. And we couldn't quite work out why there was such a concrete response to our request about films. And I don't think we have come to some kind of final conclusion, but my sense was that it may be something to do with the end of the pandemic and the kind of journey we, as the whole world has made, which was a terrifying journey with a lot of loss and mourning and a lot of dead bodies for sure. But that also we know as psychoanalysts that symbolization and symbolic breaks down when facing massive trauma, massive psychic trauma. And I think something of that might have happened. So these concrete dead bodies were things we were all carrying with us as a result of what happened. Very few of us knew nobody who actually died in the pandemic. So there were concrete losses as well as all the metaphorical, symbolic losses of 2 years of our lives that to some extent would be lost. In all of them, the characters make some kind of a journey, sometimes from A to B, more often internally, sometimes developmentally. And so we actually think it's a very rich concept that is both prone to having cliched understanding and rich understanding. And we hope we are going to be moving towards the latter.
But it's interesting if you think, though, that the breakdown in symbolising, because I guess on one level, in a very obvious way, we're all on one journey from life to death. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Freud wrote in The Interpretation of Dreams about these anxiety dreams of missing a train. And he said that actually underlying it is an anxiety about death, because dreams of departing on a journey are dreams about dying. So if you miss the train, it's kind of consolation. You're not going to die this time. We're really excited that we're going to open the festival with Agnieszka Holland's The Green Border, particularly because she is our honorary president.
Yes, it's a very powerful way of opening the festival. It's a deeply disturbing film, long and traumatic, quite traumatic to watch actually. It's definitely about the journey of the refugee, literally, but it's also about the internal journeys of some of the Polish and Belarus, particularly Polish border guards. And there is one character in particular who makes quite a significant internal journey from policing his borders to having an understanding of why these people are coming and what they are escaping from.
Hey!
George?
You playing out?
Hi, that's my bike.
We were just making sure that all of these bikes were road safe.
Our closing gala film is Scrapper, the debut feature of a young British director, Charlotte Reagan. She says that she wants to challenge traditional kitchen sink depictions of working class life and show instead the joy of connection.
Who's Georgie?
Who's asking?
I'm Jason. I'm your dad.
Can't stay for long.
I'll stay as long as I want.
We really hope that this film inspires you to join us for the whole weekend, or even just a day, to watch, enjoy and participate in the next EPFF. So see you in November.